Appreciate you all joining today. Very excited to walk through a demo and training of KWIZ's Forms Enterprise solution. I'm going to start off with a brief PowerPoint at the beginning, and then we'll spend the majority of the time with Shai, our Chief Technology Officer, walking through a demo of Forms Enterprise. Let's get started, and we'll just let people in as the session progresses and they join. So to kick this off by saying, really appreciate everyone joining today. Really excited to work a lot closer with all of our partners at KWIZ. We value you guys a lot and are going to be scheduling in these quarterly training sessions to make sure that everyone's up to date with what's going at KWIZ. I know a lot of the partners that we have use us for very specific needs sometimes, so maybe selling one or two of our applications to your client base. But we want to make sure that you're really well versed in all of the things that we offer to the market so that you can provide your clients more value and work a lot closer with us to be able to drive engagement and adoption of SharePoint. So that's really what our mission here is to drive as much adoption on SharePoint as we can. And I know that that's a big focus for a lot of the people that are on the call today. So to set the table for what we'll be doing, I'm going to walk you through a very brief PowerPoint here with some updates from KWIZ's end, just to make sure that you guys are all in the loop in what's happening with us as a company. And then I'll pass it over to our Chief Technology Officer, Shai, to do a training session and a demo of the Forms suite. To introduce myself, I'm Philp, the Director of Sales and Head of Partnerships. I put my email in the chat, and I will also send out an email following this with a recording of the session. If there's anything that you guys need at any point, please don't hesitate to email me. Happy to set up a call or provide you with additional collateral as needed. All right, so some news from our end. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing these sessions quarterly, and we'll also be willing to jump in on ad hoc sessions or training sessions as required by our partner network. So if there's ever a point where you require additional sales collateral training, anything else, please email me at pphilp@quizcom.com. And another really exciting piece of news that I think will be a great, kind of piece of the toolkit for our partner network is our solution templates that we've recently released. So KWIZ has always been a tool to allow people to build applications and really whatever they need on SharePoint. But what we've realized from speaking with some of our partners and some of our customers is that there's really a demand for some pre-configured applications as well. So that's what our solution templates are. They're out-of-the-box applications that you can plug and play for your customers and then also modify them and configure them as required as well. So the first 5 that we've created, you can see on the screen there. So an IT help desk to be able to manage, triage, and complete tasks that are being assigned to the IT team. The course registration is more for educational firms or education institutions. So allowing students to be able to register for specific courses as required. Equipment booking. So if you have pieces of equipment that need to be rented out, this is a helpful one, just to be able to manage that process and ensure that people are returning the equipment in a timely manner and that you have a log and an audit book of all the equipment that's been rented out and by who. Leave requests, so vacations and that sort of request. This is a pretty common one that we hear, and one that a lot of our customers are using is the ability to have an application out of the box to have those vacation requests submitted via SharePoint. We actually use this internally, and it's worked really well so far. And then meeting room reservations. So obviously with the return to office, there's a greater demand to be able to book out meeting rooms and ensure that that's all tracked in one place so everyone has visibility into which rooms are booked and when. So that's another application that we've built. I think our next session we'll dig into these more and probably focus on the solution templates as part of our next training session. But I really want to get these in your guys' hands as soon as possible. So I'll be sending out more information on these again in a follow-up email. And something that I think, again, will be a great piece of information for everyone on this call to know is we recently purchased another company called Provision Point, which is a provisioning management solution for Microsoft Teams, SharePoint sites, and more. So this is a great tool to add to the partnership toolkit at KWIZ here. So just a few pieces of what they do. Workspace provisioning, so enabling self-service requests for teams, groups, and sites, and implementing authorization processes so that you don't have to have ad hoc type of processes for bringing in new teams. It makes it a lot simpler to spin up additional teams, in terms of projects and things like that, so that you don't have to have an abundance of requests constantly coming to the IT team that, you have to go and figure out, is this approved? Do these people have the right permissions? Is there sensitive data in these teams? It really automates all that using templated approach. Compliance management. So again, permissions reporting is a big one that we focus on here. So ensuring that you have visibility into where teams are sitting, if they're being used, and it really helps prevent orphan teams. So especially in larger organizations, we see a bit of an issue where sometimes teams, will have millions and not millions, but a bunch of different teams that maybe aren't being used or set up to accomplish a very specific task that's been completed in some cases years ago, and there's no real need to have it around anymore. So it allows you to remove those or to sunset those teams, so that you're not having old information sitting in them that could potentially be either outdated or sensitive. And lifecycle management. So you can also, in situations where your customer is very project focused, you can apply a lease to control the archiving of those sites and teams. So maybe there is a time-bound project, like a services organization would be a good example. You can set it up so the team is around for, let's say, 90 days. And after that, it will be archived to ensure that things are, again, not sitting around, that you have a clean workspace, and that teams aren't, getting out of control. Because we see a lot of workspace sprawl, and that's really what Provision Point helps to solve. So I think this will probably be of interest to some of you guys on the call. Please don't hesitate to shoot me an email if this is a more pertinent issue or something that you want to explore immediately for a customer of yours. But I will send out more information either way, just so you have it on hand. And with that, I will pass it over to Shai. I know everyone joined today for the training session, so we will spend the majority of the time with Shai.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Shai Petel. I'm the CTO for KWIZ, one of the founders since 2006 with the company. Been working on the Microsoft ecosystem for 20 years now, and 6 times MVP, Microsoft MVP awardee. And my focus today is really to trying to show you what can KWIZ do for you in terms of your day-to-day tasks, projects with customers. And just to touch back on what Pete just showed you and shared with you about our solution templates, we're very excited about that. And we're very excited about the future of that. We really want to get your feedback on it, extend our templates, but we want to do more. We want to open it up for you to be able to build your own templates, to be able to build templates for your customers to reuse. So that's our path and a plan for the future. So really touching back on that, we really want to show you how you can build better solutions, but also how can you deploy them faster and have your customers spin up project sites and expense reporting sites real quick. And with that said, once we drive more adoption into SharePoint and we make SharePoint everybody's favorite platform and Teams, not just SharePoint, then Provision Point is a great tool for how do you manage all that, right? Because you're just going to have growth. So that's where all those things connect together, the way I see it. Now, I'll get started with a demo. I'll try to focus it on forms. I want to show you the forms capability and our concept for forms. I want to show you quickly forms in Teams and in mobile. If there are questions, Pete, if you can help me with that, just, you monitor the chat, cut me off at any time. And I'll try to really drive the conversation around the user experience. Whereas I want you to have at the back of your head that we're here for you. There's APIs, there's customizations, and there's always backdoor access for you as first-class citizens in our products to do more than we give the customers. So we work and integrate very well with third parties into our products and to deliver a custom-tailored experience. And I'll start by an example like that, if you don't mind. Here we can see a very simple, clear list that somebody created on SharePoint. But in our case, we wanted to do something with that list. We wanted to consume information from SQL Server, Azure SQL Server. So this would be my first demo right here, which shows how we work well with integrators and consulting companies. Just quickly, so you see how our forms look like when we take over the SharePoint out-of-the-box form. So you have your tab control right here. You have your conditional access and values, and a lookup allows you to create another item right here in the form. You don't have to go somewhere else, create an item, come back here and refresh because you messed up and you forgot you need to create a new account. So this is the, just that starting experience, that everything is a little bit nicer to the user. So you see I select an account, I have this filter down, I have the undo clearly telling me I modified something. We have drag and drop in attachments. Everything's a little bit nicer and quicker for the user. But on top of that, obviously we have all those conditional visibility rules. Where did you see the lead source? But this is where it got interesting here. Once you select the product license lead type, this comes from SQL Server. This is an external data source for us. And there's a product list, and it's a huge product list, but look how fast the search, inline search works in here. So you see I can quickly find all the fork products. And once I select one, obviously it comes from SQL, so it has more information. So you see the price automatically populated in here. Very clear indication. This is an opportunity for you. You can set this to be read-only, so the user cannot change this, or you can set it to be editable. So this would just be a hint, but I can give a discount on this. So totally up to you. And obviously, if we're talking about that visibility and guiding the users, you don't have to tell them, don't fill in the price if it's not a product or stuff like that. So same thing with the upsell. Once we check that checkbox, I see the details. I don't have to provide those if it's not an upsell, so it's gone, right? So we make it very intuitive for the user to work with our system. Again, we're very happy to work with you and with your customers on configuring those things. So here is an opportunity for us to guide you and for you to create your own work based on our products. For example, this was set up, and we had customers contacting us or vendors to build it for them. This was set up as a SQL Azure that's providing information over an Azure function, and our product can very easily communicate with REST API using MSA authentication or OAuth authentication to pull that information from external data sources and displaying them here in line. So if you have a customer that have their own quirks and their own third-party system and you want to integrate them, use our products to scaffold that form for you. And all you have to do is focus on delivering the Azure capability to connect and authenticate. And we will play nice with you by allowing you to expose those in our products as a drop-down with the cascaded features, with those different features here. Actually, another thing that I usually don't show is once you configure that data source is also now available for you across our products. So here I built like a really quick filtering and a table view of that data source. This is the SQL table in a table format, and I could filter them and do more with them, right? So it's not just a drop-down. Once you configure it once, it works across our products. So this shows you the benefit of using it in our products instead of developing from scratch. Also, I mentioned a little bit about our APIs and the way we allow you to integrate with our products. So let me show you another quick demo with equipment reservation. And again, this is just to show you the user experience of our forms. So let me quickly show you how our form scales down. If I now switch my browser into a mobile view, see everything gets scaled down properly and you can still use our form. I'm going to show you this again in a couple of more examples. But here, for example, I have the same thing. I'm choosing a category from SQL Server, and it filters my SQL Server products or equipment. And once I choose one, here we can see that pulling information from other columns in a read-only mode. So unlike the price, this is just informative and the user cannot change it. This has actually something really interesting in it. If I set the dates correctly, I don't remember exactly for this demo, but let me see. Now some of the options might be disabled for me in the dropdown. I think if I go to carpet cleaners, Yeah, you see, now the first option is disabled. So those kind of things of quirks, again, can be done by customizing the products. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but you can see our style editor and script editor, and you have like full Visual Studio Code with autocomplete, with comments, and a lot of snippets and code and samples for you to be able to deliver an exact requirement for a customer, even if it's not commonly used features. So not something that other customers would need. We allow you to integrate and modify our forms in that way, in that backdoor kind of approach. What I want to show you next is really our concept around how do we do things with editing items and documents in SharePoint. And conceptually, we have a very different approach than what SharePoint usually do. So if you worked with SharePoint lists, you know how it all starts. It starts with a new item form, and then you save it, and then you have a view item form, and then you have an edit item form. But that's all you have. You don't have any more use cases. All your use cases are basically derivatives of the edit item form, and that could get pretty confusing for users. It requires a lot of users training, right? So let me show you two different approaches we have for working with SharePoint lists. The first one is what we call wizard mode. So wizard mode, real quick, if I click on a new item, you see that I'll have the next capability. Again, let me show you quickly how this scales down to mobile. Really easy to work with. So I can type in my name and I can type in my email. And I know it's a broken email, and I'll choose a department, HR, and my phone number will be this. And I'll try to hit next. I don't have the save button here. I'll quickly show you our custom validations and the very informative error messages. So we validate regular expression for emails. Let me just make it big again. I think you get the point with the mobile form. And once I have a valid email and I'll have the phone number in the format that my company decided on, then I'll be able to hit next. Then I'm capturing the issue details, and I can say it's software, I can say which software it is, and Office, and I was like, I am getting a license issue, a license message, help. And when I'm about to submit this ticket, when I hit next, I'm greeted by this summary page that allows me to quickly review what I'm about to submit, and I'm happy with my submission. I'm going to hit finish. This is an intake, new experience for intake forms. You can branch off, sort of like a survey. Based on my selections in one tab, you'll branch me off to a different step. So if I said I do have a hardware issue, the next step would be to capture screenshots maybe, but it's optional. And if I didn't say hardware, we would skip it altogether. So that's kind of like the intake form wizard mode guide that allows you to really deliver a unique experience to your users without having to train them and tell them and guide them. Don't forget to do this if you want to submit a hardware issue. Don't forget to do that. You sort of like, guide them through the flow. The other approach we have is a little more robust than that. And that actually is what we call user actions. And it actually allows you to build all your use cases into that specific list. What do I mean by that? A lot of times when we come in and design a list or a library in SharePoint, what we used to do in the past, we used to set the actors, people who are going to use it. So I have a manager, I have an IT tech, I have a user, and then we used to set the use cases. So a user comes in and report a ticket, a help desk technician comes in and assign it to themselves, or resolves it, or rejects it, or asks for more information. And all that was like gone from the SharePoint world. And we want to bring it back. So that's exactly what we've done in our forms. Let me show you how we handle that in our issue tracking list, for example. So this is how we track our issues on SharePoint. Just so you know, we use our products as well internally. And I just want to show you the flow a little bit of how it looks like to work with our products on a list that was configured with user actions. So when I'm looking at this based on who I am, if I'm going to go and create a new item, instead of just being greeted by a blank bland new item form with a lot of default values. It's actually asking me, what do you want to do? It'll check who the user is, what are the use cases this user usually does here, and it will suggest one of them for me. Now, I can report a customer issue because I work with customers, and I can report an internal issue. But if a user we have does not work with customers, he won't see the customer issue option. The cool thing is the form will behave differently with different values and different tabs and different validations, and will fire different workflows based on my selection here. So I don't have to build one workflow with a lot of if-else and try to identify what the user tried to do. I just know that if you click the customer issue, I know that reported by needs to be customer. I know that he has to provide a reference number for the support ticket. And I know that when he clicks finish, this will send an email to our support team and create a ticket in the support system for someone to follow up on it, right? So this is an entirely different flow on the same list and in the same content based on my user selection there. So let me just, I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to create a customer issue. I'm going to go with report an issue. See, there's no reference number, reported by QuizCom. I don't have to provide all that info. And I will just do test 1, 2, 3 and report it on the product. Let's just something random here. I have a major problem. And I know it's a little bit out of scope for the user flows, but just so I can share that with you, we have this triage tab that is a lot of questions and scoring mechanism that we built that we want to assess if an issue is critical or not. So we built this. This is a control that's purely configurable, zero code running in here. And our support tech will go in and answer if this is an issue that impacts all customers. If the user can't edit anything, boom, get flagged. It's a showstopper. This is really, really important. So instead of us trying to guess all those things, they just go and answer those questions in here, and we will get those flags automatically set for us. And we have this logic that'll say it's critical issue, or, oh, no, this is actually a showstopper. It's something you have to handle right now. And just to show you how those kind of mechanisms work, again, this is all done without touching code at all. So again, going back to the user stories, user custom actions. I'm here, I'm capturing a new issue. I'm going to hit finish. And this issue is going to be logged into the new QA issues. And because that's what I chose, it takes me to that view. Here's my test 1, 2, 3. Now I'm putting a different hat on. I'm reading the issue. I want to see what it's about. And I have different options. Again, imagine all those options, reject, accept, approve, all those options are custom tailored and filtered based on the status of the item and who I am. So if I'm a developer, I can resolve. If I'm a salesperson, I can score. I can provide feedback on the scoring. I can provide comments. If I reported the issue, I have different actions, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. But let's say your users misbehave and they don't like to, you told them 5 times, but they don't like to using those buttons, right? We can still capture that and say, even if you just come here and say edit, I want to go rogue, we'd still force them to go into one of those most commonly used channels. And this is where it becomes really powerful because I don't have to train my users so much on how to use my system that I built, because the system tells them how to work with it. It says, those are the use cases you have. You can accept, you can resolve, you can add comments, and the form will be vastly different based on that. For example, if I want to comment, I don't want to show anything else. Just put comments, show me the comment history, and I'm done. And this will send a comment to whoever the issue is assigned to, whoever reported it, and say, hey, Shai added some comments to the issue. If I want to do something else, if I want to approve it, for example, so let me go and say approve the issue or accept the issue. Now I have a decision to make. I want to know if I am going to approve it as critical, because that's what we recommended, and I have my triage questions, or if I don't think it's going to be critical, then you see the triage changed to priority, and now we can say what kind of priority we want to give this. So the form is very reactive, and I don't have to remember everything, and it's sort of going to tell me what to do, and going to show me what's relevant for me in that specific point. I'm going to assign it to someone, assign it to the developer. So again, without going too deep into it, the main concept to remember is that you can build your use cases into the form. It's no longer an edit form and one workflow that tries to guess what the user did, and then the user break your workflow because it shows the wrong status. This is a very tailored experience which was delivered purely configurable. And if you want to provision something like that, you get your settings in a JSON file, and boom, you got your list configured the way you liked it. Let me show you how this integrates really nicely. I showed you the mobile view. Here's how it looks like from the team's perspective. Right now, I'm in our product group team. And let's say I'm here in my post and I talk with my team and I have my files here and I have the new issue. To capture an issue, I can put this built in right into my teams. And you see the same experience right here. Can report a customer issue, can report my own issue, finish, it'll take me back to the list and I can work with our forms directly from here. So this delivers really, this brings the content to where the user is, because I don't know how is it with your customers. Most of our users live in teams. So we want to bring stuff into teams for them. So this is how we do that. Any questions? I mean, Pete, I'm running through and I'm hoping I'm getting through here, but if there's any questions, feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'll just keep at it.
Yeah, if anyone has a question, please feel free to raise your hand and then I can just unmute you and you can jump in. Might be easier than typing.
All right, I'll just show two more things while they think of questions. So here you see our list view. Everything gets displayed properly in your Teams tab. I have two more things to show you. I don't know if they're of interest or not, and we probably dig more deeper into them in a future meeting. And those are how do we integrate those great web parts that we have and visualizations into Teams as well. So I have an example here of displaying an org chart in our Teams channel. So this is one of our web parts. Can connect to multiple data sources, including SQL Server, Graph API, SharePoint list, Excel files, etc. And it integrates beautifully into Teams and show your information from your website, from wherever data source it is, brings it into a very clear view where your user work. Same thing with the calendar. We have an overlaid calendar with my personal calendar overlaid with the group meetings. So you see in yellow, those are the specific group meetings. And my personal calendar is loaded from Graph API and being overlaid beautifully together. Imagine you can overlay this with your company shutdown dates, with holidays or anything you need. And this will give you a very clear project overview calendar. It'll show all the milestones in your project overlaid with teams that take time off in one clear view that you'll be able to track. And the last thing I really wanted to touch on, if I have a few more minutes, would be repeating rows. And this is just basically just to touch really briefly on different column types that we bring to the table and different editing experience that we bring to the table. So we have a lot, and I'm not going to cover all our custom column types. I showed you the lookup with the add new item built in. I showed you the external data source, for example. But the most unique one that we find, a lot of customers specifically moving from InfoPath in the past or on premises, is that repeating rows column that we've built into here. So this is a different take on a multi-lookup column. Basically what it does is when you go and create an item, let me just show you the user experience first of all, and see how those validations work within the repeating rows itself. So first I'm going to go and capture an expense report. So here's a title, meeting at XXX. This is the employee reporting it, and these are the details. That's one column called repeating rows called expense details, and it starts with 5 rows. That's how we configured it. And I'm just going to say hotel. I'm going to report 2 items here. Behind the scene, this would be a lookup column. This would be a lookup column that is basically looking up information from a different list called expense details. But see how the experience is vastly different than working with a lookup column, right? Because then you have to go and create the lookup items and then select them, whereas everything's done automatically for me here. Let me just report lunch with client expense here. And I want to show you how we do way more than just the lookup column right here as well. So I reported $200 for lunch. I reported a hotel in the future for $200. You see that the total column gets automatically calculated. This will be saved as a separate column, so you can report on it. You can create reports on it and workflow on it if you'd like. But each and every one of those is its own item with its own validation and its own conditional formatting, right? You saw how columns appear and hide automatically. Here's what happens when I try to save it. Even the column validation rules that we have on the main item, we can create column validation rules, very, very specific validation rules within each and every one of those columns, and they work within the context of their own row. So you see a very generic, basic validation rule that all expense types cannot have an expense reported in the future. Very informative message. The user doesn't have to guess what he did wrong. He knows what he did wrong. So very easy to fix. And here's something that's very user sensitive. I cannot report a lunch expense that is over $50, but Peter works with sales, so he may have up to $200. He may have different expense limit, right? So you can target those specific rules and base them on the current user, the group membership of the user, Active Directory, Azure AD group membership as well, based on the context of the item, like the date, the expense type, and sort of like give him an informative message that you cannot exceed this. This is your limit, and they don't have to guess. So as soon as they correct those two, and boom, the item's created. A workflow is going to get started up. So email's going to be sent, tasks going to be created, all that goodness around there. You see the total has been calculated here automatically. This is a lookup, so I can look up those two separately. But if I want to, and I want to report on it, I'm going to go to expense details. And here I have all the specific details with attachments if I want to. And here I can create rules for validations, for conditional formatting on them, workflows on them on a specific task. So this is really what our repeating rows is all about, taking that lookup experience to the next level and having an inline form where you can edit things. The nice thing about it, if I add the item right now, I can quite easily delete rows.
Shai, we have a question from Rick.
Yeah.
The question is, are these lookup columns available in workflow? The default lookup field types are not.
Yes. Behind the scene, this is a multi-lookup. So this is what we do. Sorry, I had a bug here. This is a multi-lookup expense details. If you uninstall our products, this will render as a SharePoint out-of-the-box multi-lookup. Our product, display it in that way and do two more things. Set the totals column automatically, so you don't have to manually do that, and goes to each and every one of the expenses and set a reverse lookup. So you see the reverse lookup here called master item. I'm going to quickly change that just because I never looked at it, but I'm going to call it expense report. So it's going to set the expense report back to the original item. So you can, when you build reports with SharePoint out of the box tools, any tool that can build a report on a SharePoint list and can drill down lookup columns can certainly follow that information right here. See, from each and every one of those items, I can click on it and it opens the main item for me, just like as a regular lookup would be. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, Rick, please feel free to post in the chat if you have any follow-ups there. And Shai, it may be helpful to dig into the actual setup on the Forms layout app and the custom actions and activities as well, just to give people a bit of a view into how that's set up.
Of course. Can you tell me how much time I have for my demo before you kick me out?
Plenty. Yeah, no, 20. You got 20 minutes, 23 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Plenty
I was very efficient. Yeah. So yeah, certainly. Let's dig through. Let me find one interesting one to show. So if I come here, let me just show you how the repeating rows is set up. Then I'll show you a little bit about the custom actions, because those I think are the most interesting ones. So our product settings are accessible in two ways. Site level settings from here. This is where I'll turn products on or off on a specific site. And then list level settings from the QuizCom apps icon on the list itself. So right now I want to configure a column, for example, repeating rows. I'm going to go to QuizCom apps. And just to give you an idea on how easy it is to configure a product. Now, this is the demo site, so everything's activated, right? But you're just going to have your few products that you use activated here. I'm going to go to repeating row column. And you either create a new one, or I'm going to select the one we had and just show you how it's set up. Set up like a lookup column, first of all. So first and foremost, it's a lookup column. Then you set how many rows you want to start by default with. If you allow the user to add rows, yes or no. So if you want a scenario where you only have 3 rows and they're mandatory, you cannot have more or less than 3 rows, you would remove that checkbox and set this to 3. Do you allow them to add more items? So what would be the label for adding a new item? And then you just configure the columns. You select which columns you want to display. You select which one you want to have a total calculated on. So you said, I want some calculation on this one. You can do sum, average, mean, max, and count. And the name of the column, the name of the total column that you want to have. And you hit save. That's it. It's very straightforward. I mean, if you're comfortable adding a choice field for SharePoint, then you should be very comfortable creating our columns as well. In terms of the...
Sorry, Shai, just to jump in, we have a follow-up question from Rick. So you can use the contents of your lookup column in a workflow conditional statement as a trigger for something?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But you can also use them, you can use them in a workflow because there are lookups. And you can also use them in our activities and custom actions. So what do I mean by that? Let me show you our activities and custom actions. If I will go into here, first of all, I'm going to delete this demo item right here before somebody starts working on it. And I'll go to our issue tracker. I just want to show you how I set up those custom actions. And I'll show you the condition editor, and I'll try to touch on that as well. So the way I set up those user actions, so remember the report user issue, report customer issue, or QuizCom issue, resolve an issue, add comments to an issue, all those are built using 2 different settings on our products. So the first one is the activities. Activities are very autonomous, small tasks. An activity could be send an email, an activity could be update the status of an item, an activity could be create an item, create a task in a task list. So stuff like that. So for example, look up information from SQL. So the user reported an expense. Go to Graph API, check who the manager is for that user. Pull the manager information. That's an activity. Another activity would be take that manager name and set it into the manager's column, right? So those are very small actions, I would say. Here are the types of activities we have, and we're always adding more. Call a web service, start a workflow, update item, change item permission, we can automate as well. But once we do those, how do we use them? We use them in custom actions. So custom actions is where we really build our user use cases, like for the new issue, report an issue, approve an issue, and this is where the conditions, I said I'll touch on conditions, this is where that comes in. So for example, if I want to say report a customer issue, or report, let me see where that is, create an issue, create a regular issue. So I'm right now creating a custom action, a user action, basically, that will show up as a ribbon button. So we have 2 types, automatic action and user action, 2 types there. And then I have to define 2 things. What does it do and when is it valid? When is it accessible? So if it's an automatic action, it runs on an event and based on specific conditions. If it's a user action, it runs on a user click, so user has to click on it. And again, we have conditions, so we can limit it. In the conditions, this is where I'm tying it back to the question by Rick. I can add conditions and say, I want to make this action available when the repeating row column, let's say the triage, which is a multi-lookup, contains a specific value, or when it's empty, or if it would be a repeating row column, I can say when it has more than 3 rows, in it, or when the total is above $250, right? Let's say you want to fire an automatic action or an automatic workflow, and you want to do that only if an expense total is above $300. So you would condition it right here in the custom action, and then you would define this only runs when there's 3 expenses, or when the expense total is more than $300. You do that in the conditions. You define when it runs. Is it available to the user to click when those conditions are met, or is it running automatically whenever the item is updated if those conditions are met? And then you say, what does it do? So now I defined when does the user action or custom action run, what conditions, is it running automatically, etc. And then I say, what does it do when it runs? So now I can say, okay, it's going to send an email, and then it's going to update the KB, and then it's going to branch off and have an activity group. And I'm going to say same condition editor here, and I'm going to say if the priority is equal to showstopper, also send another email right here, and create another KB that's a little different, or I can branch off those activities as well. So I can customize those based on conditions, based on a repeated row or any other column that we have on the form.
We have a couple questions around the custom actions and activities. So number one, can we call a Power Automate flow?
Yes, because so the integration is not straightforward and clear, but yes, because one of our activities is a web service endpoint, and you can trigger a Power Automate flow using that. Number one. Number two, you can trigger a Power Automate based on a change in an item. So you can also, a lot of times we do those tricks. We create a column that's hidden from the user, he doesn't see it. But then we have an activity that says, flip that checkbox to on, like an update item activity, and say, fire the workflow from off to on. And then we have the Power Automate listen on that and start itself. So yes, in one of those two options. I'm sure there's other ways we can do it as well if we get creative. If I want one more thing, Peter, just one last thing about the previous question, just as an FYI. I can set up an activity here to go to each and every row in the rows of a repeating row, pulling information out, just like I said, look up the product ID, look up the user's manager. So I can say, look up the expense type, look up the expense date, collect all those and put them in variables. And then I can use those variables in a condition on an activity group. So I can further investigate not just the current item with the totals, I can investigate each and every one of the rows in a repeating row. Just so I give a full answer on that question.
Excellent. And a couple more questions. Can you have a calculated formula as a custom field?
Calculated formula, you know what? We are, there's limited amount of calculations we allow you to do here. As like when you do update item, when you here update the current item, set KB to here, and we're allowing you to type in, and we're allowing you to insert tokens, and there's very limited calculations that we do, like today, tomorrow, stuff like that. We have a CR in the queue, and I would like send Peter information if you're interested in that. We have a CR in the queue to build in functions and operations into this editor, so people can really build more calculations into it. That's one part of the answer. Second part of the answer is we do that a lot, again, in a different way. We do that a lot with something we call external data source. So I mentioned it before. We said we can connect to external data source as a SQL server. Well, guess what? Because the external data source is so robust, and it allows you to do so much more in terms of filtering, calculations, creating columns on the fly, that we sometimes look up SharePoint list content, wrap it as an external data source, so that we can manipulate the data like that and retrieve it in a way smarter way. Here, I'll show you that example. Actually, I have it right here. And then we create those advanced calculations as an external data source and bubble them up to the user. Here, I'll go to external data, for example. Oh, sorry, I'm on a list level. This would be creating a column. If I go on the site level, I'm editing a data source, external data. And top side here, closed work items, that's the one. Sorry, this one is on dark theme. I know it looks weird to some people. So this one was one of those situations where we created a REST API that actually goes to SharePoint API, loads information, and then using our internal editing tools, we do a lot of manipulations of the data in here and spit out some calculations that we actually needed to be so precise and so custom that they make no sense for anyone else in the world. So we had to write our own JavaScript to sort of like collect them and crunch them in the way we wanted to display them. So yes, we're still able to do that, and we still have autocomplete, and we can save those as templates and have a great editing experience, even though we wanted to go as far as writing our own custom code to calculate those columns and bubble them up.
I think one of the questions is along the lines where you're at right now. Can we send data to API?
Send it out, yes, absolutely. So there's a current state and there's a future state. In the current state, one of the activities, I talked about custom actions, one of the activities is to call a web service. So that web service could be a REST API, SOAP's web service, and you can embed information and variables right into your payload and send them out. You can also manage authentication through it, and you can update whatever system. The response is also usable. So whatever came back from the web service will translate into a variable that you can use in different activities on your flow. So you can send it in an email, you can set the value to a column in your item, etc. It's very dynamic, right? It's like every one of those is autonomous. There's an input, there's an output, and you can play with it. On the vNext, which is not public yet, we have talks internally on the external data. So let's say you set something up as an external data. Right now it's read only, but we want to be able to support push updates into external data sources. So right here in the same data source, we would allow you to basically configure a payload for update. So the payload would say, those are the parameters I need to identify the item. Those are the parameters I accept to send as an update values. And once we allow you to do that, you remember how when I showed a lookup column and I said you can do add new item right in here? Let me see if it's this demo or not. No, it was on this demo, I believe. This is the lookup item, so we do add account right here. If this is an external lookup, it doesn't have the add button option. Once we implement the external data source updates, you'll be able to have the add button or edit button right here as a part of your form experience, or also in our web parts that display the external data. But we can do that today with a web service activity, which is available for you to use today. You don't have to wait. Here, let me show that real quick here.
Just while you're pulling that up, another question, Shai. Can you have a calculated field for lookup and metadata fields?
Oh, yeah. Well, so here we can fire a workflow or a web service, and the web service would allow you to define the payload. Yes, about default values, we can do way more than that. So we set default values to everything, including metadata, including user fields, but it's not just that. We set conditional default values. So you can have different default value than me. And we have something that we call dynamic default values. What are dynamic default values? Remember we said we can build different custom actions, right? I can say that I'm adding comments, I'm resolving, I'm cannot resolve, I'm reassigning an issue, I'm approving an issue. I can target those in our default values. So if I go to default value, I can say something like this. I can say that status, let's go to status field. And it already has a bunch, but let me create a new one. I can say that set the status to resolved if the user action is equal to resolve. So what that means, I can even target those use cases and say that even in an edit form, it's not a new item form. Again, I am right now editing an item and I chose to resolve it. It will open the edit form for me and it will change the status field to resolved. So that's what we call dynamic default values. And I can further limit that when and current user is in dev developers, right? So I can target it like that, and I can say if the current user is in developers and the developer clicked the resolve button, change the status to resolve, which is sort of like a default value on an edit form. So it's a completely different concept. We call it dynamic default values. And just to answer your questions, I don't want to show my ugly test site. I have metadata there, metadata column with default values where I tested there. But just so you see assigned to, it's a user field. SharePoint doesn't allow you to do that either. And we allow you to set default values here as well. So I can choose a specific user. I can use tokens, and the token can be a column name. So I can say it could be me. It could be a different user column in the item, and I can set them based on different rules, if that's helpful at all. So
one last question that we have in the chat. So this is actually an older one. So with repeating rows, do you have formation or like control over the background color of the rows?
We play nice with SharePoint themes. So you see everything in our products, including the settings page. It's not ours. We didn't choose to have orange here. Whoever created this site chose that theme. So that's what it's going to show you. Now, that said, you want to customize it? Absolutely. Let me show you how. Remember, I touched a little bit about our API, right? So as a part of our API, I can also have CSS editing. Let me do that real quick right now. Expense detail. Let me find it with a class name. So you don't see that real quick, but I do. I'm going to show you something on the screen here. Say I want to make this red. So right next to the script editor, we have a style editor, and I can target and say something like, I want to do div.that. That would be the field for the repeating row, right? And I want to say a background color red. And boom, I can have an image overlay. What's really important and really cool here is that we have some sample styles for you, blah, 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 whatever it is. But this is almost like working in Visual Studio Code. You see, I have color highlight. I have autocomplete color. See, white. I have autocomplete here. I can hit text. Important. And here you go. You see my text here become white. I can now, we all know how to work with CSS. We'll identify why those are not white, make them white as well, etc., etc. I do have those inline editing capabilities. It changes live for me. Beige. It changes live for me. If I hit cancel, it's gone. If I hit save, it's going to be saved as a CSS file, and it's going to be loaded with the form every single time. And by the way, we have a way for you, if you don't want to go through this, obviously, we have a way for you to pre-provision a CSS file of your choosing into every list that you want automatically. So we create one based on the list ID.css, but you can go ahead and create a file called list ID _ my amazing styles.css. And we will load both of them, and we will load them one by one. So you don't have to worry about us cleaning up your styles or you cleaning up ours. Same goes for the API. The one you edit in here is going to go to a default file, but you can create multiple, as many ones as you want. As long as they begin with the list ID, we will pick them up and we will throw them in here when the form loads.
Excellent. I know that we're almost at the top of the hour here. Really, really appreciate everyone joining today. I think this was a great opportunity to have everyone on, show you the broader scope of our Forms Enterprise suite. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't get the chance to get to today, as we only had an hour. So as I mentioned, please feel free to shoot me a note.
Something on that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Shai. Go ahead.
We didn't cover a lot. We were trying to give you the idea, but we are here whenever you have questions, whenever you have a thought of like, hey, can I do this? Hey, I'm trying to do that. Do you have something to help me? Get me involved. Get me involved. We'll be able to just give you at least a highlight answer.
Exactly. The purpose of this session is, number one, to show you the suite, but also to create more engagement with the partner network. I'm really looking forward to working closer with all of you. And to reiterate what Shai said, we're looking to help you out as you work with your customers. So if there's ever anything that you're struggling with when it comes to SharePoint, there's a pretty big chance that we have seen it before and have helped other customers work through it. So do not hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to jump on a quick chat and talk through things. And with that, we will close out the webinar for today. I'll post my email in the chat one more time just so everyone has it handy. And I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. All right. Have an excellent rest of your day, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.